Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's session, the Full Funnel Glow Up from Chaos to Conversions. If you're here, you're probably feeling what a lot of marketing teams are feeling right now, which is pressure to deliver results faster than ever across more channels with fewer resources. And let's be honest, way too many tools. Today's webinar is about cutting through the complexity, and so we're going to dig into what's working, what's not working, and how teams are evolving their marketing strategy to connect brand and performance without burning out their teams. We've got a great lineup of voices from eMarketer, programmatic B2B, and StackAdapt, and a lot of practical insights to share. Before we jump in, a quick intro from me. I'm Lara Lima, the Growth Marketing Manager here at StackAdapt, and I'll be your host for today's session. We put together an incredible lineup of voices to unpack how marketers are navigating the current marketing landscape with less complexity. You first hear from Becky Tasker, our VP of Growth Marketing, who will be leading the conversation and bringing her perspective on what we're hearing from marketing teams every day. Joining her, we have Sky Canaves, Principal Analyst at eMarketer, who brings data-backed insights into how MarTech is evolving, especially across B2B and retail. We'll also hear from Krista Martin, founder and CCO of Programmatic B2B. He'll share what a full funnel execution actually looks like in practice and the lessons learned along the way. And rounding it all out, Wayne Colburn, our Director of Product, will walk us through how all of this comes together inside the StackAdapt platform, and he'll be back for the live Q&A at the end. Okay, so let's get into it.
Sky, I am so glad that we're here having this conversation today. I think as I reflect back on my marketing journey and then look at today, I really think we've hit a point in marketing where having a good strategy isn't the average challenge that we are all up against. Most teams aren't struggling with ideas. What they're struggling with is actually how to take those ideas and put them into action in a way that actually proves out the ROI of all of those ideas across a disconnected tech stack, teams, and timelines that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. I know you've been watching the industry from an analyst perspective, and I'm really curious if you can tell us from what you're seeing what the state of marketing is right now.
So there's a lot of upheaval in the marketing industry, with retail in particular being roiled by uncertainty this year. So while the pressure on marketers is really intense, there are also some breakthrough opportunities that are worth noting. And this is not a growth year for marketing budgets in general, with Gartner reporting that overall marketing spending will remain flat at around 7.7% of company revenues. But 2025 and the next few years, we'll see a rebound in spending on marketing technology. We see that MarTech spending is growing at a healthy rate and actually accelerating through our most recent forecast period that runs from 2023 to 2027. So in 2025, we expect overall MarTech spending to increase by 16.1% to more than $31 billion total. And this is actually the strongest growth we've seen since 2021. And that pace will continue accelerating over the next 2 years and reach a total of $43 billion by 2027. So this trend holds across both the B2B and B2C MarTech segments. B2B spending is growing a little bit faster, but the B2C segment is much larger, accounting for about 2/3 of the total. So now the growth we're anticipating, it's not coming from significant budget expansion. It's coming from reallocation of budgets and that reprioritization of MarTech. So we see that marketing leaders are cutting elsewhere, and they're doubling down on tools that can really deliver measurable ROI and streamline their workflows and create more connected customer experiences. And one data point I find really interesting is just there's a growing but small share of companies that are really leaning heavily into MarTech. According to data from Ascend2, 14% of organizations plan to spend at least 40% of their total marketing budgets on MarTech this year. And that's more than double the rate of 2024 when it was 6%.
I was honestly surprised to see how strong the shift is from traditional budgets into marketing technology. My hypothesis is that tells me that marketers really don't want to pull back on their budget, but they do want to be more intentional about where they're putting their dollars to ensure they can actually go back and prove what we were talking about earlier, which is their return on their investment. We're also, as we're working with clients, we're hearing them consistently say or ask, can this help us move faster? Can this help us align better? And can it help us get to results quicker as we go through different use case planning or scenarios?
So we're in an era where ROI-driven decision-making is really reshaping how marketers develop strategy. And that challenge is coming from the very top because leadership is seeking quantifiable ROI and business impact from every dollar spent. So we've seen that the CMO role has really changed over the past few years from brand storytelling into driving growth and working across the company. And so now they're equally focused on the tech, the data, analytics, in addition to the creative and brand culture. But it's challenging, to say the least, to deliver results if you're using disconnected workflows and organizational structures that were built for that previous era of marketing. So I think this is at the root of why marketers are looking to really cut back on legacy tools and siloed systems and reinvest in platforms that can deliver the speed, visibility, and ROI that they need. So there's still a disconnect for many organizations because teams are operating with workflows that were built for a previous era and they can't support the level of performance visibility that they need. So that makes it hard to prove the ROI that they're expected to deliver.
Great. I'm going to pick up on something that you just said about needing to connect performance and more workflows and actually move into a question about execution for you. I think the one that literally every marketer has to talk about every single day in every single meeting they're in is artificial intelligence or AI. Everyone is asking, how does it help them move faster? How can they hit goals in a smarter way? I'm really curious what you and eMarketer are seeing in terms of AI integration and how it actually helps a marketer fuel their growth.
Right. So adoption is very high, I would say, but integration is much slower because it demands so much more. Now, I think generative AI has been inescapable in marketing for some time now, but more of that adoption has been on the creative side with tasks such as content ideation, creation, refinement, and some assistant type tasks as well. That's where there's really less friction and the learning curve isn't as steep. We also see rising adoption for audience segmentation and targeting, but that's more the result of usage of available features that are on the major ad platforms like Google and Meta. So I think the big unlock for marketers lies in the use of AI tools for more complex predictive and optimization work, like forecasting customer lifetime value or identifying at-risk customers, and really unifying the data from fragmented customer journeys that stretch across channels. But for that, a strong and really well-structured data foundation is necessary, and that's where the biggest block is. It's often attributed to a closed or outdated MarTech stack rather than to the new AI tools. But we do see a limited adoption of the more complex generative AI applications. According to the American Marketing Association's December 2024 survey, use cases beyond content creation by marketers were reported by less than 20% of those surveyed. And that includes really important objectives like audience building and customer journey mapping. So while most marketers are using AI now, it's typically been in an ad hoc or individual fashion, and not that many feel that it's been integrated into their workflows to the point where it's really driving significant or measurable efficiency or growth. So there's still a big gap between experimentation and integration.
Sky, all of those points are so relevant and really make a ton of sense. Just to repeat it back to you, what I'm hearing is the marketers that are actually seeing ROI or implementing AI today successfully are the ones who have really started to tackle the fundamentals or the foundational builds. They're using it on top of great data structures or existing process to move out of reactive mode and into proactive mode. But it's not the magic bullet that's going to fix fragmentation, right? It might just expose the fragmentation as a marketer tries to do more in the world that they exist in today. As I reflect on my time here at StackAdapt, even with Ivy, which is our AI engine, the real acceleration that we see is when teams are prepared to use it and engaged and understand what it can do. They don't just want to plug in a tool. They actually want to set the stage with the tools so they can use it in a way that it's meant to be used and use it as an augmentation of themselves or their team to accelerate work, not fundamentally replace the work. I like to personally say that if a marketer can take AI and become a conductor of AI, they're going to see a lot of acceleration in their results today and into the future. Let's talk about multi-channel execution. Most teams, when you talk to them and ask them where they're active, they're going to tell you things like email, programmatic, paid social, or organic social. So essentially, you can name a channel and the team is likely there experimenting or going to market in that channel. But that doesn't necessarily equal a full funnel campaign. And a lot of the times what will happen is you'll be sending out messages that could be disparate or decentralized across all of these channels. And it turns into a situation where you're not necessarily orchestrating a campaign or a message. You're really just multitasking. So Sky, what are you seeing in terms of how teams are actually executing across channels and maybe some of the results they're able to achieve when they're able to?
I think that's such a great way of putting it, Becky. Multitasking has really been the default, and very few are orchestrating effectively. And this is what fuels the gap between average and top performing marketing teams. I think that's because under the legacy structures, campaigns often operate in silos across teams, platforms, and data sources. And this leads to inefficiencies, inconsistent messaging, and then missed opportunities to connect with customers. And I see these silos as becoming more of a threat as we start to see more of the convergence between brand and performance marketing across channels and movement up and down the funnel, which is no longer linear. So, given all of these shifts, the unified view across channels is becoming an imperative. And marketers really need to work on streamlining their workflows in order to respond rapidly to performance signals from across channels, and then be able to personalize experiences that can resonate with their intended customers. So integration is still the biggest hurdle for marketers here. According to Martech's 2025 State of the Stack report, nearly 2/3 report that data integration was their top MarTech challenge.
Sky, we're coming up on time, so I'm going to ask you our final question of the day. If I'm a marketing leader looking ahead at the next 12 months and under pressure to prove ROI, unify my team, and move faster and more efficiently, what are the top 2 things I should be paying attention to actually close that gap as a leader?
So I think the leaders that are getting it right are doing a couple of things really well. First, they're investing in the platforms that reduce friction to break down those data silos and achieve integration and the unified view of the customer. So I think this is a good time for a tech stack audit to ensure alignment with the broader business goals and strategy, and to achieve those objectives you mentioned, the proof of ROI, cross-team collaboration, and speed, which is of the essence. And then I think there's also a focus on activating the data and creatives that are already in place. So budgets are tight, and it's important to make the most of what's available. And striking a balance between brand and performance marketing is really critical. According to Work Research, the balanced approach can substantially lift ROI by an average of 90%, while overinvesting on performance actually reduces ROI. And then finally, I think third and not least is building the internal muscle. One of the biggest challenges with new and rapidly advancing AI technology is just keeping pace with it and developing internal fluency to adapt to the continual development. So companies need to prioritize training and culture to make AI and automation work for their teams rather than overwhelming them. And it's a really big ask given the pace of change currently, but every organization ultimately will have to put into place a foundation for tech education and agility for pretty much every team member.
Sky, thanks for joining us today. This has been such a helpful conversation. I hope if there's one thing that a viewer walks away from today or walks away with today, it's this. The execution is what's separating marketers who plan well from marketers who grow fast. Growth doesn't necessarily mean adding more to your tech stack. It means assessing what you have today and trying to do more with it, making sure you're being very efficient and running fast, and then adding strategically when you need to. So thank you again.
Thanks, Becky. Great speaking with you.
Okay, so we've had a client, we've had them for 5 years, and they provide economic and financial data solutions to major financial institutions and government agencies in the US and worldwide. So they have a really big footprint. They're highly analytical. And so the problem that it wasn't really a problem, but the challenge that we had was that they needed an attribution process for their digital advertising. They didn't just want to run campaigns and they didn't want to just measure clicks. They didn't want to send email because they didn't want to appear to be intrusive or spammy. So they were looking at more of an inbound approach, an effective way to target these very unique customers like economists and senior level like executive vice presidents of strategic planning, CEOs, and then we're talking about worldwide. So it's a very complicated campaign, but the most important challenge that we had was they needed transparency. They needed us to prove that who they were advertising to was who they wanted to reach. So that's basically what we did. And then we had to validate that return on ad spend every 3 months. We were using StackAdapt. We had another DSP, but what we were finding is that we couldn't get the return on ad spend where we needed it to be. And so we ran a head-to-head test, and we found that StackAdapt had a more efficient process for us. At first, it was hard for us to use, but within 2 weeks, we actually were more comfortable with StackAdapt than our previous DSP. So the next thing we started to doing running campaigns in StackAdapt was just your generic campaigns, using all the audiences, the same audiences that are available on other DSPs, running the campaigns, getting used to your platform, learning about things like strategic bidding, right? And seeing how we could effectively leverage the strategic bids that you guys have, using things like geofencing for events, right? But the major thing that we pivoted to is when the ABM portion came out. We tested your ABM with both Dun & Bradstreet and Lead Forensics, and we ran an ABM campaign for a client. And what we did is we went to the client, gave us their first party data, which was about 50,000 records of emails and other contact information. We took that first party data and we loaded it into StackAdapt to build a CRM audience, number one. And then, of course, privacy compliance with the different countries. So most of that was used in the US, right? A little bit in Canada, Australia. Then we took the domains from those emails and we parsed out those domains and we created an ABM audience using the taxonomy that StackAdapt has on the DMB segments to find those target prospects. Very, very focused on senior executives and these specific job functions. And we ran the ABM campaign. And the results were about the same, but the transparency of the reporting was phenomenal. Before we did that with StackAdapt, we had to rely totally on Leadfeeder and Lead Forensics and companies like that to show us who was coming to the website. But we didn't know which companies were getting served ads. So all we knew was, and sometimes there wasn't an IP resolution, so we didn't even know which company it was. So by the end of that first month, we were sharing with our client on an account-by-account basis, by job function and seniority. We were sharing them detailed level awareness and engagement for every dollar they were spending. That was a game changer. That was a game changer for us. And so what we did is we actually eventually moved off of LinkedIn and Twitter and moved that budget to StackAdapt because we actually saw a better return on ad spend and there was greater transparency. Because with LinkedIn, we were only seeing maybe the top 200 accounts. With StackAdapt, we saw every account, even if we only served 2 impressions. So the transparency and the integrity of the reporting, it really solidified our account relationships. So beyond this account, just as a side note, our retention rate, I hate to admit it, but our retention rate in the first 2 years of our business was less than 30%. So 1 out of 3 clients was staying with us. They weren't leaving because they were unhappy with our service. They were leaving because they just weren't getting enough value. And it wouldn't have mattered if we did it for free. It just wasn't, we weren't giving them the value. When we moved to the ABM and showed them the transparency, our retention rate started to shift. It got better. And today our retention rate of clients is over 90%. Because now we have this functionality to do MarTech and AdTech. But we took another step to say, let's warm up the users. So we take that list, we onboard it with StackAdapt, right? And not only the CRM list, but we also do the ABM. So let's say we have 2 email addresses in our CRM list for senior VPs of finance. We'll take that domain of that same company and we'll find 5 other senior VPs of finance and we'll onboard that list, right, to StackAdapt, serve them ads for CRM and ABM and retargeting. And then the outcome of the report, we look at who's engaging, and then we go back and we refine that list. And maybe we send out, we onboarded 70,000 emails. We'll find the 35,000 that are most engaged, and then we'll send those emails out. And our open rates go from like 12 to 15% to 35 to 40%. It depends on the campaign, right? But that's about the average. So overall, it definitely makes a huge impact. And now we recently got a major account. They're a client with a $50 billion market cap. It's a big client. I can't say who they are, but we're starting a new campaign this month with them. And it's going to integrate everything that we've been doing with ABM, but it's going to layer in display. It's going to layer in native. It's going to layer in online video, connected TV, and we have an audio component that's on hold, but we're going to layer all that in, and the reporting that they're going to get is going to show them the details for every account, job function, seniority. They're going to be able to see like the vice president of media buying for Havas advertising agency spent 3 minutes on their site. We don't know the person's PII for privacy reasons, but we know they spent 3 minutes on the site. He watched the video twice, completed it once, right? That kind of detailed attribution. And that's going to be provided to them weekly. And then, of course, all the other metrics, cost per click, cost per landing page view, time on site, all that they're going to get. And then that's going to feed the attribution of the campaign 3 months later. So yes, we're going to start to layer in all these additional channels. And then, of course, with these same clients, when we present them the new features in StackAdapt like polygon mapping, we find the conference center in Google Maps, and we just use your tool to draw around the conference center and only hit people that come into that fence of the conference center. And then we can also layer on the companies that are attending the conference so we don't waste ad impressions on vendors. So now we're combining your ABM with your geofencing, and we're eliminating 40-50% of the waste. So it all comes down to money. We're saving clients money and showing them how we're saving them money with transparency. And that's why our retention rate's 90%. We couldn't do it without the tools. The big aha moment here is get rid of the campaign mentality. Unless you have a very specific objective, like we have a conference, that's different. But if you're looking to build ROI over the long term, don't just run campaigns. You can keep changing your creative, you can change it, but it's got to be always on. Because a good example of that is intent. Clients are buying all this intent data, which is good. But if you think you could just jump in at the last minute and capture bottom of funnel leads and run your business, you're missing out on the much bigger picture, which is being in front of your target audience 24/7. Clients come to us and they want leads. They have a case study and they want people to download it. And to be honest, it's not something StackAdapt is going to solve because I don't think they're looking at the right challenge. So when people are doing content syndication and things like that, I usually recommend they do it another way, but I recommend a different approach. I say, you can have a case study. That's great, but don't put all your budget and all your eggs into the basket of getting people to download it, because people are going to download it. Your salespeople are going to follow up. They're going to waste a lot of time, right? They're not necessarily going to turn into revenue. And if you measure, we've had clients measure that over 6 months to a year or 2 years. And what they find is it's costing them more with a lead gen approach than if they just took more of a straight targeted approach, that they're in front of the right people with the right messaging, have their salespeople calling on them, prioritize the calls. Because when we send a report out to a client, and let's say it's CPG and they see Procter & Gamble and Unilever at the top of the list for engagement, well, they're going to call those 2 companies instead of calling Coca-Cola first. Right? So that kind of insight to prioritize sales and marketing, I'm telling you, the number one thing I tell clients, if it's a new opportunity, and it's always the marketing director that comes to us first or somebody in marketing, can we invite your top producer in new business development or one of your top producers in new business development, sales, and bring them on the call? And almost always they say yes, because I tell them it's going to make this thing work better. And let the salespeople not only tell you who they want to target to prioritize the campaign and get the audience right, but the salespeople can tell you the problems that they're solving for the client. So instead of creating a bunch of banner ads and investing all this creative time and strategy around a product or a service, you start to display problems back to the audience, right, that you're solving. And then that increases your response rate, because people say, I have this problem, right? They see an ad that reflects that problem. Then they find your company and realize you have a solution. But too many times we do it backwards, right? It's all about me. It's all about promoting my stuff. And if we flip the coin on that and start with where the client is coming from, I need help, and serve ads that way, it makes everything else on the tech side perform better. Yeah, I would say orchestration flows probably up there, but definitely DCO, right? We've already got several deals signed to start to do polygon mapping on conferences. That's already happening. So we've leveraged some of the things that have come out just a couple of weeks ago. We're already using, but this creative optimization, right? That's key, right? Because we've been focusing so much on the audience and perfecting that. Now we want to start to use the tools for creative optimization.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Wayne Coburn, and we've just seen a great example of how marketers are bringing brand and performance together. Now I want to show you what this actually looks like inside the platform and how these ideas come to life from a tactical execution standpoint. We'll walk through a real campaign flow that connects email, programmatic, and dynamic creative, all powered by first-party data. I'll show you how each of these parts fits together, and more importantly, how we simplify what's often a very complex setup. So first, we start here in the data hub. You can see I have a bunch of profiles here. Now, the email addresses are obscured. That's because this is PII, or personally identifiable information, and I don't need access to PII, so I don't have it. Only users with the who need access to see PII can actually see PII in the platform. Now, if I go to import profiles, there are two ways to import profiles, either from a CSV or from an integration. I click integration. I have a number of integrations to choose from. I can click Shopify and then go into my Shopify store setup. It's super easy, super convenient, and all you have to do is click your advertiser, the store, and go. But for now, let's go ahead and import some profiles from a CSV, as the process is very similar. So I select my advertiser, I choose my CSV data here, and hit next. Now you can see I have a ton of fields pre-selected from the CSV file. So these are all of the column names, and I get to choose which fields I want to bring in, which fields I don't. Maybe I don't care about last name, so I don't bring it in. They're selected. You can set whether or not these are PIIs. So I come here and say car ownership. It's mapped to own a car. There's no PII here. These have already been pre-mapped, but I can just bring in all of the information that I need, nothing that I don't need, and save it into my file, or save it into my account. And so if I go back to profiles, here I can see all of the global profiles. So these are StackAdapt properties, email address, which is required, first name, last name, phone number, city, etc. This is all fake AI generated data. So it would be what you would want to bring in order to do segmentation and make lists. If this was an integration, Like Shopify, I'd have another tab here, which is events, which are all the actions that people take. So these are all of the things that are true about an individual, like, the average time between orders here, or what my loyalty level is, or my favorite color. Events are the actions that I take, like adding something to a cart or checking out, browsing items, things like that. And so I have properties and events, both of which can be used throughout the platform. And then if I go into segmentation, all of those properties become available to create a segment. So here I have my MVP segment, which we can see is average order value is greater than or equal to 50. And my loyalty level is gold, platinum, or diamond. So this is only going to grab people in my account who match all of these criterias, and I'm going to put them into this segment. Now, segments are dynamic. They are calculated when you use them. Lists are quasi-static, which means you can take people in and out of a list, but otherwise it doesn't change. And so my customer list here is all the emails that I've uploaded. And you can use both. You can use lists and segments throughout the platform anytime you need to target an audience. And that is Data Hub in a nutshell. Now, if I'm going to create an email campaign, so we select for my advertiser, I'm going to create a Black Friday campaign. Here I select my recipients, so I'm going to send to my MVP segment only. Here I have excluded segments. So this is just individuals that I might not want to send this email to. So maybe I don't want to send this to anyone outside of North America, so I can create a list of, or a segment of those folks, add them here. Maybe I want to select some people that have not opened an email in a really long time to protect my deliverability. What I don't have to worry about here is selecting people who have unsubscribed or otherwise don't want emails. StackAdapt takes care of that for you, so I can leave this blank and know that if someone has opted out, they're not going to be getting any of these emails. So here I create my subject line, Friday, preview text, save. The sender is StackAdapt, and this is my reply to address. Here you can see what it would look like in an inbox. I can I can determine when I want this to go out and if it's at the recipient's time zone. When I go to design content, I have a big gallery here of things to work with. So I can just search this and find Black Friday templates that I might want to use. I can also use saved templates that I might have, or if I already have a template that I like, I can just upload the HTML here, and all my brand guidelines, colors, etc., would all just pull in here through this HTML upload. And so here, let's go back here, grab this template, and this will drop me into a WYSIWYG template editor where I can go in and add things that I might want. Can also go through here and I can add merge tags. So merge tag is data from the profile. So I can pick here first name as my merge tag, select that in. So then hello, first name, Black Friday sale is on. So now I've actually personalized the email with the first name from the profile. You can save this, and my email is largely done. I can also create an A/B test if I would like. So I can actually send out 2 versions of the email to maybe 20% of my list or segment. Wait a while, determine which of the versions is winner based on clicker open rates, and then send 80% of the winning variation. So it's really cool to test and learn as you go instead of testing and learning and then applying it to your next campaign. And next, I can add my tracking. I can add programmatic targeting, if any. Programmatic, of course, includes display, native, any of the StackAdapt programmatic channels. And then, boom, here I am ready to go. And there is my Black Friday campaign. Now, the next thing I can do is orchestration flows, where I say, okay, I've got this email going out to get everyone to my website. So an email is something that you would send to try to drive behavior. And an orchestration flow is something that you would send when someone does takes an action or doesn't take an action. So the orchestration flows react to what people are doing or not doing. So here I can create create a new orchestration flow. My starting point is going to be we'll call this Black Friday orchestration. Here I can do source-based. So if I had a Shopify, enabled, then I can take a Shopify event, like adding to a cart. Otherwise, I can pick profile as a profile change as my starting event. So the action type might be I'm just adding them to a segment. So if you get added to my MVP segment, then I can add you to you will end up going into this profile or into this orchestration flow. So add you to my MVP segment. I can also filter on the audience. So say like I wanted to exclude people outside of North America. I can use that segment that I've created or that list that I've created and filter those people out. And so you're only getting the folks that you want in this orchestration. And so here, someone is added to the MVP segment. So let's go ahead and send them an email. Here, I build an email in exactly the same way that I built my email previously. Set all of these pieces up and move forward. And then after I send an email, maybe I want to say, okay, did they click on the email? So here I would go to a true false split. I could also delay. Actually, let's put a delay in here as well. Let's put in a delay of maybe 3 days. So I send an email, I wait 3 days, and then I check to see if they profile event, email interaction, if they have clicked on the email campaign. So yes, they have clicked on the email campaign, then maybe, but they have not done anything. I can do a true false split here to see if they've made a purchase. If they haven't made a purchase, maybe I want to send them another email. So I would create a new email here. But if they didn't click, maybe I want to do something different. Maybe I want to put them into a programmatic campaign. And this is where it gets really fun because you can think about all of the things that you might want to have this customer journey be. So here is we've checked to see they clicked an email. They clicked an email. We send them another email. They've ignored the email. Let's go ahead and put them into a 20% off campaign. I also might want to exclude them from some campaigns as well. And so here, after they've sent this email, if they have, we could put another true false split and they've clicked it. Maybe they haven't done anything yet. Maybe we want to add them to a bottom of funnel campaign and exclude them from the top of funnel campaigns. Think of all the different things that you can do to really orchestrate this journey and say, okay, I'm hitting these people exactly the way that I want in order to drive as much revenue as possible for my business. So next we can go into DCO or dynamic creative optimization, which dynamically changes the creative that someone sees in their programmatic advertising based on actions they've taken and profile attributes. So if I go to campaigns and I want to create a new campaign, let's check display and then DCO. The goal here can be conversions. Save and continue. Let's go ahead. Let's run this from October 1st through the end of November. So we're priming people for DCO. Dollar out there. Here I can do all of my normal targeting options. If I go into audience, I can choose including audiences. So I can choose any of my third-party audiences that I've built. So I want to use this DCO campaign on my entire customer list, all my first-party data. I could also do my MVP segment or some other segment as well that I've built or some other list. But let's just target my customers with this DCO campaign. Go down here. And let's look at the creative. So we'll add a creative here. So here I have my product feeds. So let's pull in my e-commerce product feed. You can see an example here of what my DCO ad might look like. I have a bunch of different templates to choose from. So say like I want to use this one. And this is what it would look like. I have all 14 sizes selected. You don't have to build all of these sizes. We build them for you dynamically. So it's good just to keep these checked. I have 4 product box. My creative name is Black Friday DCO. I can use my entire product set. So the primary product set is all products that I have. Fallback is my is again all products, but I can zoom in if I want to do just very specific groups of products using product feeds, brand logo, etc. And you can see here what a number of different examples in different sizes look like. And that is DCO in a nutshell. You can update the creative to be anything you want and or adjust it to your brand with logos and CSS to make sure that it looks exactly like you want it to look like. And then because this is all mock data, I don't really have any analytics to share, but for email, for orchestrations, for DCO, we have a full range of analytics letting you know exactly what people are doing. Are they clicking? Are they interacting? Are they converting? And we can show you lots more information. I'm happy to talk about that in the Q&A. And thank you very much.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining, for interacting, engaging. Wayne, that was so insightful, very insightful walkthrough. I was amazed about all the amazing tools. And I think it's time to answer people's questions. I think a lot of everyone that is here alive, they're waiting for it. So if you do have any questions for Wayne, it's time to drop them in the Q&A panel, and we'll get through as many as we can today. So now,
Sounds good.
yeah, cool. So now let's get started with a topic we've seen come up a few times. The first question is, can you customize orchestration based on different stages in the funnel? That's a good one.
Yes, there's a couple ways to do this. You can either have different orchestrations for your different stages with different entry criteria and different filters, or you could have one larger orchestration where as profiles move through, if they hit different criteria, then you say, okay, we're going to move them into this part of, we're going to move them into like a mid funnel or lower funnel campaign, or move them up into an upper funnel campaign. So there's a couple different ways of doing this. My recommendation would be to think about a single largish orchestration that you would have for whatever program that you're running, and use the branching and filtering that we have to sort of take people through and then identify where they are and make sure that they are seeing the right messaging both on email and on programmatic.
That is a very powerful way to think about orchestration. I think meeting people where they are instead of treating every touch point, that's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so next question. Can I automate re-engagement flows based on inactivity or time windows?
Yes, that's really easy. So, um, the simplest way to do that would be to have a flow that would be like your engagement flow and just put everyone in there. Put in a time delay. And I mean, the time delays can be as long as you want. It could be, 8 months, 6 months, whatever. And then at the end of that, have a true false statement that says, hey, like, have they done the thing? Have they been engaging? Have they been unengaging? And then put them through the rest of the flow based on their activities. So you would start them on the re-engagement flow there. Um, you can also have a flow that is triggered by a list or a segment, I mean, and have that segment be someone who is hasn't engaged in 6 months. And so as soon as someone enters that segment, they would start moving through the flow automatically. So like I said, there's a couple ways to do this. Probably the latter is the recommended, but we're building a pretty powerful platform here. So if it makes sense to do the former, you can do that. But again, yeah, I would just have a list or a segment, I mean, where the criteria to enter the segment is disengagement, and then put them into the flow once they've entered that segment.
Love that, because let's be honest, we all have those audiences that go a little quiet. So having like a smart way to bring them back is such a game changer. Okay, so let's move on to a next question. And this one is related to what you were just talking about. Can I build segments using both behavioral and profile data, like purchase history plus email engagement?
Absolutely. So in the demo, I just had profile properties, but when you're in the segment builder, you can do things like look at Shopify purchases or white paper downloads, whatever the data is that you have in our system from the various integrations, and say, okay, I want people who match these properties and have done or not done these actions. So I can say, I want people who are living in the US and have clicked an email in the last 30 days and added something to their cart in the last 60 days, and create that as a segment, and then use that either we'll use that anywhere you can use segments. I could use that programmatically, I could use that for sending email, or I could use that as a starting point for orchestrations.
Yeah, I think that's where it gets exciting. So connecting the dots between uh, someone and the how and how they behave, and then turning that into action. Okay, we do have one more. Is there a timeline or plan for the data hub to be worked into direct mail with some of those email possibilities? Also, what vendor is being looked at to integrate into this data hub?
Okay, I'm not sure if this is two questions or a single question. For the first piece, we are definitely thinking about direct mail and other channels. We haven't just built email and are, happy to stop there. We do want this to be a fully featured cross-channel, marketing platform. So the so I would say we are definitely thinking about it, but there's really no timelines right now. So just keep listening, and I'm sure our marketing team will let you know if and when these things come out. For the second piece, vendors, we're not really doing anything too amazing right now or too intense right now with direct mail, but across the board with vendors, we are looking at different integrations. We really do want to build as many useful integrations as possible. We have a full integration roadmap, and if there's integrations you would love to see, please let us know, because we would love to build the things that you want to use and pull data from sources that you're already using.
Thank you, Wayne. And I think we have time for one last question. How do you measure performance across that kind of flow that you just showed us? Can you track results end to end?
Yeah, so we're still building out some of the analytics on the orchestration flows. What you can see is at each email step, you can see all of your normal email analytics. So who's opening, clicking, engaging, converting. On the programmatic steps, you have all of our programmatic targeting as well. And stay tuned, because there's a lot more analytics coming, showing you exactly how your journeys are working, how branching is going, and all the various cool things that you would want to know when looking at an orchestration flow. So stay tuned for that. It'll be coming. I guess I can't really give you any timelines, but it's definitely stuff that we're thinking about and working on.
Maybe we can squeeze one more, Wayne. Does the accurate reporting and transparency work the same way in Canada as it does in the US, or is it limited to US data?
So on the MarTech side, so for everything email, it is exactly the same everywhere in the world. There's really no differences in email between US, Canada, EMEA, the EU, APAC, whatever. On the programmatic side, it is limited to what we can do, what we can do programmatically, and it's the same limitations in Canada, EMEA, APAC that you would see now with everything programmatic. So in general, I would say, and then also the connecting the email with the programmatic is going to work better in the US, not quite as good in Canada, and in places like the EU, where you have GDPR, the match rates are pretty low. This is pretty standard stuff, and but we're doing our best to address all of this as much as we can in a privacy-centric way.
For sure, we definitely are. All right, we'll wrap it there. Wayne, thanks again for the walkthrough and for taking the time to answer all those questions. I know I threw some last minute ones. So if we didn't get to yours, just keep an eye on your inbox. We'll be following up with everyone in the next few days. And thanks again, everyone who joined us, who interacted. We really appreciate the time and the engagement. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.